Good afternoon to you all. And can I begin by thanking Stuart and indeed his colleagues for organising this very important event, which I think he was telling me started way back in '88. And even then he had 3 or 4 other countries involved, and it's become a sort of international super conference, as I understand, in the wonderful grounds of St John's College. And if you get a chance, do go to the chapel, because they have some of the most exquisite music in the world. The choristers here are world famous. So there's some very interesting issues up for discussion over the, I think, 3 days of this conference: cybersecurity, international transfers of data, not footballers, I think, and the Internet of Things. And I thought I'd start, if I may, by tackling the elephant in the room. Of course, the world has been changed by Brexit, and for a period, the future will be more uncertain. And I'll have to be less definite today about the detailed UK line on many things than I would have been only a very short time ago. But the problems that this conference was called to address are still important, and we will still need to develop policies to meet the same problems. The answers will need to draw on the same facts and needs. So while the detailed future may be different from what we envisaged 10 days ago, the underlying reality on which policy is based has not changed all that much. Now, one problem is that we don't know how closely the UK will be involved with the EU system in future. At one extreme, if the UK remains within the single market, EU rules on data might continue to apply fully in the UK. On other scenarios, we will need to replace all EU rules with national ones. Currently, it seems unlikely we will know the answer to these questions before the withdrawal negotiations get underway. But what we must do is to tackle the issues calmly and think about the opportunities as well as the challenges of this ambiguous position. Now, I have this attitude as a result of my business experience, and indeed my own background as the daughter of a father who reinvented himself as a Brussels consultant after his farming business failed. We need, and this is talking about the opportunities, to unleash economic dynamism to reverse any Brexit downturn by getting people to pull together under a new Prime Minister and by finding the right regulatory and the right trade arrangements in Europe and internationally. So I am very much in listening mode at present, and that's right across my portfolio, which in addition to data includes intellectual property, professional and business services, so that's a lot of you. I try to champion in Whitehall the single market because I sit in both the culture and the business department. And that, I think, also brings certain synergies which will be very valuable in this time of change. But however the politics turn out, the basic problems we face on data will not be very different. These are: how do we protect data? And indeed, at a more fundamental level, what do we mean by data? I suggest data represents units of information that pass through systems, and protection generally refers to the technical or procedural means by which that information is protected. Now, strictly speaking, that's accurate. This is the lens through which organizations often view data protection issues. They have been seen first and foremost as technology or IT issues, certainly very technical. But data protection can be viewed through a quite different lens. On this view, data represents people, individuals with personal lives, reputations and livelihoods, increasingly enmeshed with the technology we rely on through the data they share. If organizations misuse or lose this data, they are breaching not only people's rights, but they're invading their privacy. And they risk damaging people's well-being, not just data sets. And in the correspondence I receive as a minister, people don't talk about breaches and technology failures. They talk about their distress, their fear, their anger, and an erosion of trust. Technology shouldn't therefore be the starting point for a response. Protection should be about respect for individuals and the personal information they share in good faith. And that should shift the focus in the boardroom from a purely technical issue to a reputational and a commercial one, including, of course, a commercial opportunity. And I speak as somebody who spent 18 years as a business executive. And it's clear to me that it makes good business sense. So £1 of every £5 earned by UK companies now comes from the internet. And a 2014 Nesta study of 500 UK firms found those making greater use of online customer data were up to 13% more productive. Very important at a time when we're trying to improve UK's flatlining productivity. Now, until recently, my main focus in these matters of data and digital was on the impact of the EU data protection regulation. And as matters stood, and perhaps still stand, it was expected to take effect in the UK on 25th of May 2018. But in line with what I've said earlier, all of us, and I mean you as well as the government, need to consider carefully what might be done either to replace it if and when it ceases to have effect, or instead, if in the event it never comes into force at all. And as I've pointed out, the future could take several different forms. And we need to identify as quickly as possible how best to react to whatever path is eventually chosen. Now, one thing we can say with reasonable confidence is that if any country wishes to share data with EU member states, or for it to handle EU citizens' data, they will need to be assessed as providing an adequate level of data protection. This will be a major consideration in the UK's negotiations going forward. We will maintain close contact with the Information Commissioner's Office during that transitional period, as they have an important role in helping to guide organisations who are already working hard to prepare for implementation of the regulation. And we are fortunate, I believe, to have a new Information Commissioner, a Canadian, Elizabeth Denham, who starts here this month. I know she will bring a zest and a wealth of experience to the role at this time of change. In the meantime, the Data Protection Act continues to be the UK's data protection legal framework, and it is important that organisations continue to comply with it. Enforcement and compliance is often as significant, in my experience, as the legal regime around it. And we're also ensuring it works better with the Digital Economy Bill, which should be published shortly. I should also mention the negotiations to agree a renewed safe harbour agreement by means of the new EU-US Privacy Shield. Again, it's not quite clear how this will affect the UK, but we will need a satisfactory understanding with the United States of the rules to be applied. But what I can say is that I talked to the US minister recently when I was in Cancun for a brilliant OECD conference on the digital economy. And DCMS officials are currently in Brussels at an Article 31 committee meeting where they're going to cover the amended text of the Privacy Shield. I understand that the aim is to come to a swift conclusion on the text in the upcoming weeks. Throughout the negotiations, the UK government has been urging both the Commission and the US to conclude negotiations on this new legally robust adequacy decision in order to provide clarity to the businesses that transfer data from Europe to the US and to reassure citizens that their rights will be upheld in the new agreement. All of our discussions with the Commission and the US have recognised the need to strike the balance between commercial interests and fundamental rights. I now turn to the relatively easy subject of cyber security. And that is a major priority for this government. In November 2015, the Chancellor, not the most generous of men, announced a £1.9 billion investment in cybersecurity over the next 5 years, including the establishment of a national cyber security centre, underlining the importance of this area. The centre will establish a single point of contact for industry to get advice and support on cybersecurity. Businesses in all sectors should take action to protect themselves. Most successful cyber attacks exploit basic vulnerabilities So this is a risk that can be easily managed by most firms. Good cybersecurity requires continual focus, leadership and commitment, not only to prevent breaches, but also to detect and respond to incidents rapidly. Speed is key in the modern world. We put in place a range of guidance and interventions to help businesses protect themselves online. The government's Cyber Essentials scheme has been developed to give industry, especially our 5.6 million small businesses, who are very important to our economy and vital to economic dynamism, a clear baseline to aim for in addressing cybersecurity risks to their company. I know you're discussing this, and I'll be interested to hear how you think things are getting on. But it's clear that businesses can do more to ensure their staff have a greater understanding of cyber threats. And to improve awareness within the industry, we've launched several free online training packages, including one for small business and one specifically for law professionals to raise awareness of cybersecurity and help staff improve their skills. And my message today is get on with it. Now, if political events were a little less exciting, I would probably have waxed lyrical and long about the Internet of Things, how we're going to see exponential growth of ordinary objects and devices connected to the Internet. Many of these devices are already on the market, and in time, nearly all products and services will have a digital element. There's a huge opportunity for Britain, at home and overseas, with its strength in digital, its creative, innovative people, and its strong universities. We are in one today. And this will allow us to keep up the flow of new ideas and new IP, which is so important to Britain. Now, where automation takes a large role, for instance, in driverless cars, it will be important to have established a clear basis for dealing with protection of users and third parties and liability. And I think the news has underlined the importance of that in the last week. And Tech UK's Internet of Things Council is working on a common industry approach to this kind of issue, the kind of industry effort which I warmly welcome. We will have more to say in our digital strategy in due course, but I think it will probably be imprudent for me today to forecast the exact timing of that important paper. So, to quote the Chinese proverb, we live in interesting times. I don't think we knew until last week how interesting they might be. The essentials are, I suggest, first, that the explosive growth in digital developments of all kinds will continue apace, and second, that the need to protect citizens' interests and data will remain a priority. But how we achieve the latter objective has just got a little more difficult. All of us, government, business, civil society, and everyone else must strive their best to succeed. I'm sure we can. The sooner we think harder about how best to adapt to recent developments, the better. That process can start this week on the beautiful lawns of Cambridge. Thank you for listening. And I'm so sorry I have to go back to London, but I was absolutely determined to come, albeit for a very short time. I look forward to hearing the results of your discussions in an area that is really close to my heart. And I probably have time for a couple of questions.